Tim Petrowich for Dateline Marion, and we're speaking this week, as we do every week during the football season, with Marion head football coach Kerry Martin. And Coach, I think a lot of people might have been surprised, including you, when you looked at the scoreboard and saw a 64-29 win over Jerseyville. And not only that, but 58-14 at halftime in what some people have told me is the best half of football they've seen Marion play ever.
Wow.
So
it's quite a compliment. It was a surprise, and not winning wasn't a surprise, but certainly by that margin and having that big a lead at halftime, and it was a lot of fun. I'll be honest with you, it was a lot of fun to coach that and watch the kids perform. Anytime your kids perform at a high level, and you watch the smiles on their faces, and you watch all that come together, and it was a good night. A lot of kids in, a lot of kids got to play, and it was a lot of fun. We know that. You got to enjoy those moments, because those moments don't happen very often on our schedule. So, you got to really appreciate a ball game like that when you come out and you play at that level, and especially early in the year. It's sometimes it's hard to execute it at a super high level early in the year, and I was proud of the effort.
Now I know that one of the things that will catch people's attention is when you look at who you played. Jerseyville had a very impressive win in week 1 over a borderline 7A, 8A team in Granite City, and to come out and win in that kind of convincing fashion, I think probably caught a lot of people's attention.
Yeah, I don't know exactly the Granite City Jersey game. We've got a copy of that film, and a lot of turnovers early in the game by Granite City, and Jerseyville capitalized on some short fields. The game got out of hand, so I don't think that game was really indicative of the talent level of Granite City versus the talent level of Jersey. I think it was a little more equal than that. The score certainly wasn't equal. So I don't know. It's just one of those weird things. I think some nights these things can happen, and sometimes it's about matchups. I've talked about that a lot, that what may be a matchup here that works good for you, you can play somebody else. You're trying to compare scores, and all of a sudden the game's a blowout one way or the other, and the matchup isn't, what you do well and what they defend well may not, work out, or sometimes it does. And we've played against teams you look at their record and think this ought to be a win, but their strength may be running the ball and our weakness may be defending the run, and that's not a good matchup for us. So football is a lot of that, and I felt like our receiving core was something they didn't defend well. I thought they would defend the run well. We had to throw it, I think, to really win the ball game and then make them play catch up, and that's what happened, thank goodness. And so ended up being a good night.
You've talked all along about turnovers, winning the turnover battle, and you mentioned that they took advantage of a lot of turnovers against Granite City. They had 5 turnovers on Friday night, none for the Wildcats, and I think you scored touchdowns on at least 4 of those 5, if not all 5 turnovers.
Yeah, that's a big deal, and you and I sound like a broken record sometimes, but we emphasize a lot of the same things. But turnovers are a big deal, and it's difficult to win a ball game when you turn the ball over. But not only turning the ball over, but it's where you turn the ball over. If you're missing red zone opportunities and turning the ball over in the red zone, or if you're turning it over deep, and we got some really short fields in the ball game, and so it's almost one of those things where we got the ball, scored a few plays, fumble recovery, scored in a play or two, just really fast scoring. And if you're going to score 58 first half points, you're going to have some short fields and quick strikes, and we did.
You got yourselves a punt return touchdown, so 2 weeks in a row a special teams touchdown. Special teams was an issue in the spring, and it seems like the special teams has really corrected itself.
And I feel like Coach Schulmeister is a great special teams guy. He takes a lot of ownership of it and works really hard and does his own scouting report. And I felt like last year our special teams were really good except for kickoff. Our kickoff team struggled, and it's funny because I just was talking to some area coaches, and from some good programs, and they were telling me about their struggles with kickoff and how they're, going through some of the same things. Maybe it's over aggressiveness, maybe it's just lack of discipline, or what. It can be a number of things, but we've been better, and I'm glad to see Coach Schulmeister get rewarded for that, because he does work very hard at it, and he takes a lot of pride in it, and it was just good to see the kids. 2 weeks in a row, special teams has made a difference in the ball games, and that's the third phase, but it doesn't mean it's the least phase. It's a big part. And if we tell the kids it's the greatest transfer of yardage that takes place in a ball game: punts, kickoffs, kickoff returns. And when you change that field position, you increase your percentages or decrease your percentage chance of scoring. So it matters.
You had some players with some pretty impressive individual nights. We start with Evan, 19 for 22 for 276 yards and 4 touchdowns, playing only a half of a football game. Those are good game stats in just 2 quarters. Talk about what you saw from him, because for me watching it, he looked like Friday night he looked like an elite high school quarterback with the way he followed progressions, hit the open man, and just did a lot of things right.
Well, I think the first thing is the accuracy. I mean, he threw balls that were, on the money. I mean, he threw accurate, deep balls. Second of all, as you said, he followed his progression. He found the open receiver. I think poise is a big factor. He stayed in the pocket. I think on the second touchdown pass that we threw, we stopped the film during film session and wanted our kids to see the pressure in his face. And he didn't go off his back foot. He stepped into the throw. He took the hit to a touchdown pass to Vince Newsome. So, I mean, those are things that I think you're looking for as a coach. How does he handle the pressure? He did. Is he accurate? He was. Did he go follow his progression and stay within the game plan? He did. He made good decisions. He didn't force throws, and he wasn't locked in on one person, as you and I talk a lot about. He found the open person, whoever that person may be. So, I was real proud of his effort. As I said, I bragged on his work ethic before, and when we practice something, he and I together, and we work on a technique, I love to put the film in and see that technique being used in the game, and it's not being lost in the transfer. So I'm proud of the effort he's put forth so far, so we'll hopefully keep going.
You mentioned Vincent put himself in a couple of more record categories with a punt return for a touchdown, 144 yards, I think, receiving, which puts him in the top 10 for a single game. Had 3 touchdowns. It was a special night for him.
It was. Each year he played a little bit as a freshman. He caught a touchdown pass in our playoff win against Rich East in 2018. Yeah. So I've been proud of his ability to elevate his game each and every year, because there were high expectations for Vince coming in. I remember Jaden Lacey, who was probably the best receiver to ever play here, say, my records are in jeopardy because of that young guy right there, and he pointed to Vince Newsome, and so even Jaden said that he could be the best, and sometimes it's easy for a kid, high school, college, pro, to kind of rest on their laurels a bit and say, well, everyone thinks I'm going to be really good, so I must be really good. But he's not done that.
It seems like his game has changed this year.
Absolutely, and I think we saw it in Carbondale in the spring with the big hit he took in the first game and spun off and scored, and you said that's a different Vince Newsome. And then this year, his yards after catch are the best I've seen. He's stronger, he blocks better. And one of the things that I think we need to mention is the fact that on kickoff coverage, he's been the first guy down the field and making tackles, and so that's a team thing, and the blocking is a team thing. So Vince has really embraced other elements of the game, not just catching touchdown passes, and that's what makes me the most proud. And I think his teammates see that. And it's funny because once teams have gone to double coverage on him, he told me the other night during the game, he said, it's okay with me, other people are going to get open. And pretty soon Walker Fox and Jake Bruce and some others make big catches. And a lot of that's due to the fact they had to double Vince, and that makes it very difficult to cover Mason, Walker, and Jake.
That leads me into my next question. Vince had 3 touchdowns, and you had 9 for the game. 6 touchdowns from 6 different guys were the other ones, and in a variety of different ways again. And that's one of the things that makes this team so hard to defend.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't something that we script out and say, well, let's try to get a touchdown pass to Jake this time, or it's just happening. And we never, I don't call plays necessarily based on let's get this kid the ball. I mean, it's just what I think is there. If it's Jordan Beverly in the game running the ball for the first time all year and he scores a touchdown, so be it. If he's in the game, we trust him. And I love the way our guys are maximizing each and every rep that they get. And I think a kid like Cole Bundren. Cole is part of our certain offensive packages, but not all of our offensive packages. But when he's in, he performs at a high level in the package he's in. And then Mitch Milligan does that in our tight set, and Lucas Lanier and Tommy Wiseman. And all of our backs, Devin and Lucas, are all capitalizing on the snaps that they get, even though they're being shared by a lot of different people. And I love, that's when our football team is at its best, is when we're able to go in and get maximum effort, maximum performance from guys, no matter how many snaps it is, whether it's 5 or whether it's 50, and we're getting that.
The thing that we have to mention, we talked about it after the game Friday, I know you've talked about it several times, all these things offensively, the time for Evan, the receivers being able to get open, all this kind of stuff. Credit has to go to the offensive line, and I thought they were at a different level Friday night as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and you know, it really, wins and losses still come, no matter spread offense, wishbone, wing tee, whatever you run. Wins and losses are still very much based on how the line play is on both sides, and you know, your skill guys make the catches and make the throws and excite the crowd, but the time Evan had to make those throws came from an offensive line and running backs in the backfield that were committed to protect him. And yes, he showed poise, and yes, he hung in the pocket, but the initial rush was kept off him. The blitzes were picked up, and that's a big deal. I mean, and as I said, on the defensive side, same way. Early in the game, when our defense dominated, our defensive line was winning the line of scrimmage, and I think that's where the difference in the ball game was. It looks like it's the skill guys, and certainly we had some mismatches on their secondary, but offensive line did a great job of giving Evan time to get the ball down the field.
It doesn't get any easier, and you play a team that people look and say, well, Highland's 0-2, but then you look at who they play.
Yeah.
A borderline 5A, 6A school. It's been perennial playoff contender in Washington.
Big time.
And then 8A Edwardsville, who has only, been to the 8A state championship game like 3 times in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So that's their 2 games. And last week against Edwardsville, they lost by a touchdown. And so they're not afraid to load their schedule.
Not a bit.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because Highland is a really, really good football program with a great football coach in Jim Warnicki. And what's interesting is that when I first got into coaching in the late 1980s, I went and watched my hometown Salem play a playoff game against Highland. And they had a running back named Billy Greenwald, and Billy Greenwald set a record that year for touchdowns by a running back in the state of Illinois. I think he went on to play at Northwestern for a while, but my point is, it was in the late 80s, and they were really good, right? And Coach Hooker was there at that time. Then they went through some other coaches, but they've always been winners. Their down years were still good years.
Right.
And this is a long span. People right now are thinking, "Gosh, how old is this guy talking right now?" But I've been in this business, you know, since 1986 as a student coach at Benton, and they were good back then. They're still good today in 2021. Forget the record. It's who they played and how they played those teams. 30-20 loss to Washington, a 1-touchdown loss to Edwardsville. This is a very, very good football team.
We've talked about their quarterback. You mentioned him before. 4-year starter, Brent Wibbles, and he threw for 350 yards against Edwardsville.
Do not want to hear that.
Yeah, but you have to know.
No,
yeah.
and I saw the score, the Edwardsville score, I think Saturday morning, and that was not the score I wanted to see. Because the moment I saw the score, I said that they are truly for real. I mean, and I read the article in the paper, and Matt Martin, the head coach at Edwardsville, talked about just how good Highland was. And he plays the O'Fallons and the East St. Louis's, and he plays the highest level competition we have in the southern part of the state. In some cases, as good as anybody in the state. So he knows. So yeah, this is a very good football team.
So that being said, what do the Wildcats need to do? Obviously, Highland's going to lean on the throw, but they have done some running. Their quarterback is their leading rusher.
Yes.
So there's going to be a little bit of a mix. How big of a test is this for the Wildcat defense?
It's a big test. The next, I told you the last week, I don't look ahead very far, but you look ahead a little bit. You look at the schedule, you look at what you've got, you're looking at scores. It's funny that our next two opponents, Highland and Cahokia, are both, I think, right now sitting at 0-2 each. And they both lost. Really, we're going to get really tested. It's exciting for me to see our team get a chance to play someone that I think is a really great measuring stick of how good we are. At the same time, you've got to play well, you got to execute, you can't turn the ball over. There's so little room for error here against the Highlands of the world, and we know that about Cahokia every year. Very little room for error. So it's going to be a big test. It's going to be a big test for our offense. It's going to be a big test for our defense, certainly our special teams, because they're going to play chess with us. It's going to be a chess match. They're going to make adjustments. They're going to do schemes. They're going to do things, and we got to be able to respond to it. And they've got experienced players, winning tradition, just like we've got, and it ought to be a great ball game.
A lot of times in a matchup like this, the confidence is pretty high that your offense will be able to find some things to do. Do you
Right.
see some things you can do offensively?
Well, you always see some things you think you can do. Whether you can do them or not, that's the question. So, it's funny because it is like that. It's like, we've got game plans on the board, which obviously we can't show, but we have game plans in my notebook. We have game plans with coaching conversations, and we think, and the real tricky part, and I think most people know this, is the fact that you can't stray too far from what you do. You try to keep it within your system, but are there things you can do with your system that a little tweak here or there, blocking scheme change, route change, maybe you can tweak to expose something you think is there. And ultimately, a lot of times it just comes down to executing what you do and doing it well. You change too much, you tweak too much, you get out of your game, and you don't recognize yourself on film. And I felt like last year when we played Centralia week 5 in the spring, I strayed a little far from our game plan. I think I complicated things a little bit for Hunter Simmons, and he paid a price for that. Probably didn't have his best game of all 6 games. That was probably his worst game, and that was on me. That's where you overcoach, you think too much, and you get your guys out of your game plan. It's the worst thing you can do. So I'm working on staying within our system and doing what we do, and hopefully we can execute well enough. But you got to find some things, Tim. You got to find some things that you think you can take advantage of and make them happen.
You're going to get to recreate it for the second week in a row. How great was the atmosphere here Friday night?
It was great. It was, and I think one of the things when the game was over that made the game so much fun was the fact that the crowd was so big and so loud, and to be able to score points and hear the roar of the crowd and do it kind of in an exciting fashion. They want to see the ball aired out. So, to see that many fans in the crowd and to see that many kids get to play, it was awesome. Everything from the military salute to the band and the dance team and the cheerleaders and just the parents and the fans and the armed forces veterans being honored, and gosh, what a special night it was. And we have had so many of those over the years, whether it's armed forces or pink outs or homecomings or senior nights. Wildcat football home games are special.
But you've missed it though, haven't you?
Yeah. Springtime we got a little taste, but it was not the same. This was special. This was a lot of fun.
Well, we'll try and do it again Friday night, 7 o'clock here at Wildcat Stadium. The Wildcats and the Highland Bulldogs. That's Marion head football coach Kerry Martin for Dateline Marion. I'm Tim Petrowich.